everybody, this is Mike Michalkow, and I'm really excited to be here chatting with David Ward from Musicians on the Record. It's a real honor to be here today. I'm really happy to tell my story and answer any questions you have there, David. So whenever you're ready, hit it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is huge, musicians on the record. Bring it on.
You've heard the music, now hear their story. This is the show where we get the musician's story. And I'm so excited today on the show, drummer and drum educator Mike Michalkow. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Oh, thank you, David. It's an honor to be here today.
Yeah, it's really great to have you, and a beautiful drum kit right behind you, and hopefully we're going to hear some of that today. So you are from Canada, and you have been drumming for many, many years, and so I want to hear about your story. And a main part of your story is, the drum educating, teaching lessons around drums. But let's start with your story as far as when did you first fall in love with music and the drums?
Oddly enough, it was at age 5, okay? But I didn't start playing drums till I was 17.
Wow.
Because apparently I had a drum set that my parents bought me from like a toy store that I had destroyed. Now I don't really remember that, but that's the story. And they figured, hey, kid, you're going to wreck this thing. You're not getting another one.
Yeah.
And that would have been a sign.
Right.
No, I'm really glad that I did start later because I may not have taken it super seriously like I did when I was sort of a late teenager becoming a young adult. So it wasn't until I, just right after my 17th birthday, and my birthday is actually next Saturday, so
Happy
we're
birthday.
coming on 29 years. So now you know how old I'm going to be, 46.
Yep.
So 29 years. It'll be 30 years of actually tackling this instrument in 2018, because it was 1988 when I got started. So yeah, that's kind of what where it kind of started. But I had some pretty encouraging teachers at the time, and I think it was just something I wanted to do because I was hanging out with musicians. People who were musicians, and I just kind of liked the fact, that they were using their hands and feet to make sounds, and I just thought it was really cool. So that's how it kind of got started for me.
Yeah. And so at 5, you didn't pick up the drums till 17. At 5, what were you sort of called to? Were you playing other instruments?
No, I mean, I was playing with Lego and G.I. Joe from what I remember. And I just remember, I don't even remember why. I think because my brother was a drummer when he was younger, so I guess my dad might have figured, well, let's see if Mike will become a rock star and help him retire early. And it's funny because I remember putting on, it was a record player, if everybody knows what a record player is. I remember my parents were heavily into Elvis. Now keep in mind this was in 1976, so Elvis I guess still the big thing. Yeah. And I just remember, I don't know, I just remember there was a mirror and a drum set and a little tiny drum set, like those little toy ones, and the heads were made out of tissue paper or something really thin, and I remember damaging them. I still have the sticks somewhere from that kit. They're tiny. They're like half a foot long, right? And I don't know why I still have them, but the drums got destroyed, and then Mom and Dad threw them up. But yeah, there was no real musical family. I mean, Dad played a little bit of guitar, and a couple of his uncles did, but it wasn't like I came from a musical family.
Okay.
That's still, people always wonder about that, and there's really no one in my direct family who is musical. I mean, they all have the heart to play, and they would like to play, but no one's silly enough like me to try to make a living on doing it.
Right. Well, you're doing pretty well, it sounds like. So what was that music? Who were your inspirations then, Mike, that helped you when at 17 or even earlier before start picking up the drumsticks and start playing the drums?
Well, all through my youth, I loved music, and I liked everything. And it was weird because I kind of, you go through those phases. So in my early teens, it was Iron Maiden, still at Iron Maiden, Iron Maiden, Motley Crue, Judas Priest, all the metal bands. Yeah. And I was a bit of a headbanger, let's call it that. Yeah. And I liked all those bands, Rat and all those metal bands. And then I kind of went, when I was a half-pipe skateboarder, believe it or not. And there's video of me skateboarding with Tony Hawk somewhere out there.
Wow.
Yeah, we did. I was 16, he was 19. I don't think it's on YouTube anymore. But I got into sort of hardcore punk, like bands that Steve Caballero was listening to, and then it was just sort of like skater punk rock. And then I kind of went from the heavy metal scene into sort of faster, angrier kind of music. Not angry, but just more aggressive, which helped us in the skateboarding world. You'd be at a half pipe all day long listening to bands like Dirty Rotten Imbeciles and Black Flag and Suicidal Tendencies, and those kind of bands. And the drumming really stood out for me because I could really hear what was happening. I was starting to tune my ears into the drums. But there was another guy that we skated with who played drums, and now that I think about it, he wasn't very good. He could play one beat, but to me that was like mind-blowing. I was, oh my gosh, this guy can play one beat.
Yeah.
And he taught me this one beat, and I was like, okay, that's it. I'm sold. Like, I want to play. But I was listening to, like, even before then, I was listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I might have caught him on MTV or something like that. So there was this blues world that I was in. And then Peter Gabriel, as a younger kid, I loved Peter Gabriel. Genesis, and really good pop, Michael Jackson. And it's nothing that I really didn't listen to. I probably wasn't into some of the more glam rock stuff like bands like Poison and that. I don't think that was sort of my thing. But I totally appreciate it now. It was amazing. But it was fun. So when I picked up a pair of sticks, I just wanted to play as fast and as loud as I could. Yeah. And that's what it was. It was like I had real long hair, dyed blonde, wore army fatigues and all that stuff. And I didn't know who I was as a person. I didn't know what I was. You know what I mean? I was 17. Like,
sure.
What am I? And then I get a job a year later, and I cut my hair, and I'm listening to Depeche Mode. It's just amazing how things can change, and maybe I'm a very random person that way. But no, I had some really good teachers that encouraged me to listen to some great bands. Like, after it was okay, cool. You've got those bands that you love, but here's some other drummers and bands you should check out. And even at age 17, there was a bass player who introduced me to this band from Canada, maybe some of you have heard of, called Rush.
Yeah, I've heard of them once or twice.
I can't remember the drummer's name, Neil, or something like that.
Right.
And I remember, the first album he lends me was a cassette, was A Farewell to Kings, and that changed everything. Right there, I was like, okay, whoa. I can't just play this. And I think the song was queued up to the song Xanadu. And for anybody who knows that song, it's not the kind of song you just jam.
Right.
It's the kind of song you need to go to the music store and buy temple blocks and cowbells and glockenspiels.
Right.
I'm not a drummer. I'm a percussionist now. This is awesome.
Right.
So that really changed my whole perspective on drumming at that point. And then a year after that, I was studying with another teacher out of Winnipeg named Mitch Dorge, who played with the Crash Test Dummies, right? I was originally learning in Winnipeg, which is the dead center of Canada in Manitoba. And then Mitch was a fusion guy. He was known as the fusion guy before the Crash Test Dummies. And he introduced me to drummers like Dave Weckl and Vinnie Kailuda and Steve Gadd. Also I'm like, whoa, hey, there's a whole new thing over here.
Right.
It's almost like, okay, Rush is almost more what I can do. I can't do what Vinny and Weckl are doing, so I sort of stayed safe with Neil, which sounds funny.
Right.
But there's a different thing. When you're bitten by that rock bug as a young kid,
yes,
and then all of a sudden you're introduced to a whole new genre of music. It's like, whoa, I don't even know how to play a swing beat, and then you have to figure out how to do that.
Right.
And then real quickly to sort of advance to the story after that, once I kind of studied privately with a teacher named Norm St. Hilaire out of Winnipeg, he got pretty busy and then I got pretty busy, and I was studying with Mitch. Mitch gets the gig with the Crash Test Dummies. I'm now 19, 20 years old going, now what? When I sign up for... or I auditioned for a university in jazz studies in Edmonton, Canada, at McEwen University. And that, once again, changed everything once again. So there was always these really cool alterations. I didn't really have a straight road. There was so many different detours.
Yes.
And it's, okay, let's see where this one takes you.
Right.
And luckily, a lot of the paths that I've taken have steered me in the right direction. There's been some where you go, oops, got to back up,
Yeah.
Firm believer and never give up. If it's something you want to do, so many people that just quit because, oops, someone said no.
Sure.
It's for every 3 people that say no, one's going to say yes.
That's right.
So I look for the one, even meeting you, David, at the band show. It's like, wow, there's someone who knows what I'm doing and understands. But I'm not going to give up just because people say you can't do it or you're not good enough or whatever. So, a little bit of the, kind of the inspiration came from self-motivation as well.
Sure, that sounds great, and that sounds very intrinsic, resilience part of you, right? So, and I can hear the already, because I think I said this to you when we met at the NAMM show, but you don't necessarily know me, but I've been taking lessons with you for years on the Drumeo Edge site. And I know one thing I know about you is many different varied styles. And it sounds, I can hear in your story that you learned all of that fairly early on, which really sounds like it serves you when you're teaching somebody now, right?
Absolutely. It's not an ego thing. Yeah. But when someone says, what can you teach me? I say, what do you want to learn? And they go, well, jazz, great. I have a jazz book. I studied jazz. Latin, I love Latin. I don't really play in a particular Latin band. I play in a Santana tribute, but that's not true Latin. That's a rock gig is really what it is for me. But I loved studying. I spent so much time learning Latin rhythm, studied a little bit in Drummers Collective in New York, and went through all those books when I learned how to read. So the Latin stuff, the funk stuff, the metal stuff I still love. It's so much fun. The prog stuff is still fun. So my goal when I teach is to make sure that each one of my students gets what they want out of the lessons, because I can't just give them one direction, because I didn't grow up with one direction, so I can't teach that.
Sure, absolutely. And so, it sounds like you went off to college and did that. When was the moment for you of that dream of, hey, I want to do this professionally versus any other profession?
Well, I gave myself a goal, because when I graduated college, I was 24, I guess it was. I was probably 24. Just did the 2-year program there, because I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't really have desire to be a teacher in a college or a high school. Mm-hmm. Looking back now, maybe, but unfortunately we can't turn the clock back. So it was almost like, okay, I've got these tools, I've got this motivation, I read these articles with people and I read their success story. Let's see. I was one of those guys. Let's see what happens. Yeah. You live with us. Let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. So I left Edmonton and literally with a drum set and a VCR. Wow. In my Honda Civic. This is a true story. Yeah. And I drive to a city that I don't know anybody. I have an aunt who was like 80 years old, and I went and stayed with for a couple of weeks until I could find my own place. And it was really funny because I was under a weird mentality, which I think a lot of young musicians are. Like, I just thought if I walked around with a drumming jacket on downtown, people would just pull me into the club and say, "Dude, you're our drummer." Yeah. That wasn't the case. Yeah. I was thinking, hey, man, I got this jacket that says Peisty on the back. People are going to go, dude, you must be a drummer. We need you. Right. That was my mentality for a couple of weeks. Believe that or not, right? But then I started going to the jam sessions and meeting musicians and meeting players and meeting producers. And then the work started to snowball a little bit, right? To the point where I was playing in some bands that were actually having some success. I don't mean lots of money, but lots of gigs and lots of exposure. And I play with some bands that had, some opening acts and things like that. But then, just as quickly as it begins, it can end. So, and these people, as soon as the band would break up, all these musicians stopped playing their instrument. I'm like, whoa, I've got killer gear here. I gotta keep going. It's like, just because my car breaks down doesn't mean I'm going to stop driving. Right. Like, wait a second. Yeah. So I'm like, no, I'm going to move on. So then I was kind of thinking, what am I going to do next? And I was doing a bit of teaching. I started getting into teaching. This is quite a few years ago, and I loved it. I really loved it. But there wasn't really a lot of students, and the rent wasn't getting paid, and the car payments weren't getting paid. So then a friend of mine says, "Hey, you should go work on the cruise ships." I'm like, what, and be like, what, a lifeguard? What do you mean? And he's like, no, play drum. You can do that? Once again, kind of naive. And sure. And he says, hey, here's a number. Here's a guy you should call in Miami. So sure enough, hey, hi, I'm a drummer. I think I can read and play your stuff. And next thing you know, I got this gig on the cruise ships. And I'm making money. I'm making better money playing on the cruise ships and seeing parts of the world that I probably wouldn't go to or would have to spend a lot of money on a vacation on these tropical places. Wow. I did that for almost 10 months, and it was a great way to pay off some debt, pay off a student loan, buy a car, and then have experience, come back. But then I got a little tired of that, and I went, okay, I got to go back home. I need to get back into the scene of playing and back into teaching, because ship life for me was a little. I need variety in my life, And after a while, it was like, okay, I can't. I got to go. I need to get out of here. Yeah. So I think after about 10 months, it was almost 10 months to the day, I came back, and then just started networking again and starting meeting more players. And at that time in the Vancouver area, there was a lot more happening, studio work. But it's about meeting people and being cool. Like if I just walk in and go, hey, I'm the guy that you need to hire, people get rubbed the wrong way with that, right? So you go in and you'd subtly, be professional, but be subtle, and people get to see you play. And that's what happens. It's about meeting people and being cool. Because as soon as you're not meeting people and you're not being cool, then you wonder why you're not doing what you should be doing.
Sure.
Right? It's like any industry, but the arts is even more challenging, right? Yeah. Because it's a big part of it. We're all out there trying to do our thing, and it doesn't matter who it is, but great artists and producers and engineers and whoever, they want to work with cool people.
Sure. If
you're stuck in a studio with somebody 14 hours a day for 3 or 4 days. There shouldn't be much attitude floating around. It should be a good time, and you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's so important. So then I kind of got back into that scene pretty quick, but I also gave myself the goal, or sort of a time limit, we could call it. I said, if I'm not really doing what I want to be doing and making a stable living, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be a police officer.
Well, that was the plan B.
Plan B.
Yeah.
Plan B. Well, I didn't mention that I did go to business college right out of high school and got my business administration diploma.
Cool.
And I want to be an accountant. Remember I said earlier, no math questions?
Yeah, right.
I just don't want to talk about that.
Exactly.
So I could have made a living as a math teacher or as an accountant, but I really didn't want to do that. I just thought, that's not me. It's just, I would have been so bored. I did work in an office for 1 year doing accounts receivable, and I remember writing out my drum lesson for my one student that I had, and the boss would come by and I quickly pull out the spreadsheet. Yeah, we're all good. And then you go away and writing out how to write 8 notes on a hi-hat.
Right.
That was really what was important to me at the time, and so I wanted to see if I could make an okay living at it, and it's a lot of work. There's no question about it. You have to know people and you have to constantly work. But there's no free ride, I don't think, in this industry at all. Unless you become a great rock star and you make millions of dollars, which I'm not. And I don't have.
Well, and I was talking with someone else a couple of days ago, and they were saying, it's not just the gold records on the wall. If you're able to make a full-time living playing drums or teaching whatever, you've made it. So, congrats.
Yeah, because I don't do anything else. I would like to, but I honestly don't have the time.
Right.
I volunteer at my kids' school and stuff like that. That's something non-music related at all. But to me, that would be my other job. So if I go volunteer to help the class for field trips and all that kind of stuff, that's great. Yeah. Now, they don't pay you for that, but that's okay. But I don't want to do that. I don't have to. I'm going to keep on teaching and doing what I do and keep plugging away and meeting great people like yourself. And that's hopefully going to sustain me till the day that I'm no longer here.
Right. So, absolutely. Yeah.